Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari
Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksuranmilitan Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stavitan Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamaya Devananti Svapadanti Kam. First of all, I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Shiksha and Diksha Guru, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pada Satara Sata Sisima Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Then I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Shiksha and Sannyas Guru, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pada Asatara Sata Sisima Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my Shiksha Gurus, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Asatara Sata Sisimad Srila Bhakti, Srila Gaur Govinda Goswami Maharaj and Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharti Goswami Maharaj. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of the Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga, Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Prabhupada, and Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji and Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And I offer my obeisances to all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis who are present here today. I Dandavat Pranam to everyone. Hare Krishna. So, today I have some special guests here. They are math teachers. So, I am not a mathematics man, but I am a historian. And I have a great affection for the great country of India and the history of all the sciences and everything that has come out of India. And since I was always a student in history, I did my research on the history of mathematics from India. So I have an essay. I'm not going to read the whole essay. I'm just going to pull some points from this essay that I wrote. I start off the essay with a very important quote by Mark Twain, a great author from America who visited India in the 1800s. India is the cradle of the human race, the birthplace of human speech, the mother of history, the grandmother of legend, and the great-grandmother of tradition. Our most valuable and most instructive materials in the history of man are treasured up in India only. Mark Twain. So he had a great respect for the country of India and its historic contributions. So there was the first thing I want to establish is a quote from Albert Einstein, where he gives credit to India for the decimal system. We owe a lot to the Indians who taught us how to count, without which no worthwhile scientific discovery could have been made. A quote, direct quote from Albert Einstein. The great French mathematician who was called the French Newton, or the Newton of France, Pierre-Simon Laplace, he wrote the following quote about India's contribution to the decimal system. It is India that gave us the ingenious method of expressing all numbers by means of 10 symbols, each symbol receiving a value of position as well as an absolute value. A profound and important idea which appears so simple to us now that we ignore its true merit. So this is a very important quote. And Lancelot Hogben, a very brilliant scientist of the 20th century who wrote 26 books on science, including Math for the Millions and Science for the Millions, has said, "There is no more revolutionary contribution than the one which the Hindus made when they invented zero." So without zero, you cannot do all these mathematical computations. Zero is an essential element in all of this. And on this I give a graphic with the original Devanagari, the English, then the Sanskrit word, then the Romanized Sanskrit for each of the 10 symbols, from Shunya, Eka, Dvi, Tri, Chatur, Pancha, Sas, Sapta, Ashta, Nava. These are the 10 symbols. Then I give a chart showing the ancient Brahmi numerals, and then enter the Indian Gwalior, then the Sanskrit Devanagari, then the West Arabic, the East Arabic, 11th century, 15th century, and 16th century, showing the progression from the original. There's a graphic that's in this essay that I wrote. So the question is, where does Vedic mathematics first appear? According to Shankaracharya Bharti Krishna Tirtha Swami of Govardhan Mutt, who published a book in 1965 called Vedic Mathematics, or 16 Simple Mathematical Formula from the Vedas. The origin of all Vedic mathematical formulas appeared in the Parishishta, the appendix portion of the Atharva Veda. So this is where we first get the concept of Vedic math, from Atharva Veda, one of the original 4 Vedas. According to Navaratna S. Rajaram, author of Vedic Aryans and the Origins of Civilization, the Rig Vedic age ends around 3750 BCE. The Rig Veda at the time was still an oral tradition. Between 3750 and 3100 BCE was the Vedic age, which included the other Vedas, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva, along with the 108 Upanishads. In 3100 BCE, the oral traditions are manifest in a written form by the sage Veda Vyas. And this encompasses a whole other aspect of the understanding of transcendental sound vibration. Because for every mantra, there is a yantra, there is a form. If you've ever looked at cymatics, cymatics is a process that, for instance, they put sand on a flat surface, and then they vibrate the surface with the Shri mantra, the Shri, and on the surface, the Shri yantra manifests. The sand forms into the Shri yantra. So this shows that sound has form. And so what Vyasadeva did was he took the oral tradition of Sanskrit and manifest the letters in the Sanskrit language as a form of the sound vibration that he was uttering. Now, the next period is called the Sutra period. And sutras differ from other Vedic literatures in that they are concise statements of a scientific principle, an aphorism, as opposed to a long, complex poetic verse. The word sutra in Sanskrit means string. So that they are a string of aphorisms. So now Panini, he made the Astadhyaya, which is a text on Sanskrit grammar. And Patanjali made the Yoga Sutras, and Pingala, who is related to Panini, made the Chanda Sutras. What we're going to find out is that Fibonacci actually learned the Fibonacci sequence from our Arabian mathematicians who learned it from, I forget the name now, but I'll give it to you here. It's in my essay. And it was actually originally from Pingala. Pingala made the Fibonacci sequence thousands of years ago. And he created various combinations of the short and long syllables. He eventually developed a binary system that was similar to Boolean's algebra. This is what Pingala did. Based on the Sanskrit grammar of Panini, he created a system of math. And this is how he wrote his Chanda Sutras. According to Rajaram in Vedic Aryans and the Origins of Civilization, in terms of the full scope of mathematics, the Silba Sutras, or Bodhayana, Apastamba, and Katyayana were very important. Rajaram points out that it was the great American mathematician Abraham Seidenberg who authored Origins of Mathematics that concluded, after 20 years of intense research, that the Silba Sutras were the origins of both the algebraic or computational math and the geometric constructive math of the Vedic literature in the world. And here we see, I'm quoting all the scientists and historians who are giving us the evidence of how Vedic mathematics has gradually made itself to the West. The story of how it goes to the West, we're going to hear now. Following the history of Vedic civilization as given in the book Vedic Aryans by Frawley and Rajaram, the Silba Sutras, 3000 BCE, predate the mathematics of Old Babylonia, 1700 BCE, and the Egyptian Middle Kingdom, 2050 to 1800 BCE. What to speak of the Pythagorean theorem of 500 BCE, which is in the Silba Sutras. But it is often mistakenly attributed to Pythagoras by historians. So this is a summary overview of how the foundations of Vedic math were manifest. This is part of mine. Now we will talk about how the mathematicians that appeared after this period in time followed the Vedas and Sutras, and how they used mathematical principles, the books of cosmology, of the universe, and other scientific conceptions that appear throughout Vedic literature to promulgate these conceptions of math, cosmology, and science in India. So the person most credited with utilizing the wisdom that came from before, Silba Sutras, and also in some other books. I have the quote here, I can't remember the name right now. This is Aryabhata, sometimes considered the father of astronomy and mathematics in India. However, Aryabhata brought the ancient mathematical knowledge of the Vedas and the Sutras into the public domain more openly than his predecessors. In his books, Aryabhata gave the measurements of the circumference of the earth. He delineated a heliocentric universe. He describes a spherical earth spinning on its axis along with elliptically orbiting planets. These calculations and descriptions explain the movements of all heavenly bodies in the universe with exacting accuracy. Aryabhata accomplished all of this nearly 1,000 years before Copernicus. However, as the French astronomer Jean-Sylvain Bailly states, these calculations were there in the ancient literatures like Surya Siddhanta, with some 4,500 years ago, and it was Aryabhata who codified them, bringing them into modern public domain as formal science of cosmology. So there's a quote here by Jean Sylvain Bailly. She's an 18th John Sylvain Bailly. He's an 18th century Vedic astronomer, and he writes, the motion of the stars as calculated by the Hindus before some 4,500 years ago vary not even a single minute from the tables of Kasim and Maya, used in the 18th and 19th century. The Hindu systems of astronomy are by far the oldest, and it is from the Hindus that the Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, and even the Jews derived their knowledge of astronomy. Now, this is another very important quote from Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan is the author of that cosmology series, and he has identified in the mathematical calculations of the Hindus a very important point. The Hindu religion is the only one of the world's great faiths dedicated to the idea that the cosmos itself undergoes an immense, indeed an infinite number of deaths and rebirths. It is the only religion in which the time scales correspond to those of modern scientific cosmology. There's no other religious group or practice in the world that has identified the time scales of the history of the universe as it compares to modern scientific mathematics and cosmology. The cycles of the history of the universe, according to the Hindus, run from our ordinary day and night to a day and night of Brahma. Carl Sagan is talking about Lord Brahma. 8.64 billion years long, longer than the age of the Earth or the Sun, and about half the time since the Big Bang. So, here we see how this Vedic cosmology is very accurate in the calculations of the stars and of the history of the universe. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the movement of Vedic mathematics from India to the West. So, following Aryabhata from 476 to 550 AD was Brahmagupta, 598 to 668. After that was Bhaskar the first, from 600 to 680 AD. Now there's one professor in America called Jacuthalal Ginsburg, who wrote a book called New Light on Our Numerals, and that was published in 1917. That book makes the observation that the Hindu notation, meaning the single numbers in the decimal system, was carried to Arabia around 770 AD by a Hindu scholar named Kanka, who was invited from Ujjain. You know, Ujjain is in Madhya Pradesh. He was invited from Ujjain to the famous court of Baghdad by the Abbasid Caliph al-Mansur. Kanka taught Hindu astronomy and mathematics to the Arabian scholars, and with this help, they translated into Arabic the Brahma Sputa Siddhanta of Brahmagupta. The recent discovery by the French savant M.F. Nau proves that the Hindu numerals were well known and much appreciated in Syria about the middle of the 7th century AD. Now, this is a direct quote from the book of Jacuthalal Ginsburg called New Light on Our Numerals. Now, there's a historian, very famous historian in America called Will Durant, and he wrote The Story of Civilization. And the first volume is Our Oriental Heritage. And he writes that mathematical concepts of algebra were invented in ancient India, and they were passed on to the Persians and Arabs, who gave the name algebra. That's how it became algebra. This knowledge then spread throughout Europe. How the Vedic math went from Arabia to Europe is the story of Fibonacci. So it was Fibonacci, whose real name was Leonardo Pisano, which means Leonardo of Pisa. Fibonacci's father was Guglielmo, a merchant of Pisa. He was appointed to be the counsel over the merchants of Pisa, who resided in the North African port of Béjaïa, Algeria. So Fibonacci's father wanted to give him a good education in mathematics, so he sent him to study calculations with an Arab master. Later, Fibonacci went to Egypt, Syria, Greece, Sicily, and Provence in France, where he studied different numerical systems and methods of calculation in order to advance his education. And in 1202, Fibonacci published a book called Liber Abaci, the Book of Calculation. And this book introduced in Europe the Vedic numerical system of the decimal system. This was in 1202. Up until that point, they were using Roman numerals. So there's no way that you can do advanced math and algebra with Roman numerals. You have to have a decimal system, and you have to have shunya, 0. These are all required. So he brought all of that with his book Liber Abaci. And the Fibonacci sequence, which he introduced, originally came from Pingala, who was the brother of Panini, who did the Sanskrit sutras. I have some graphs in here because Fibonacci, not Fibonacci, but Pingala made what was called the Matra Meru. And if you look at the sequence, it shows also diagonals of Pascal's triangle, which is a very interesting thing from a historical perspective. Now, I don't know that I want to talk about this right now because I wanted to publish this first before
No one is
talking.
recording the video.
Huh?
No, it goes only recording. Oh.
How Isaac Newton, I didn't want to talk about how Isaac Newton got calculus from India. I'm going to skip that part.
Yes.
Because I'm on Facebook right now, and the people in the public are watching what I'm speaking. Okay, so we will skip to the next part. I want to show you this picture of Einstein with Rabindranath Tagore. Einstein used to call him Reb, means rabbi. And Rabindranath Tagore played a very key part in the development of quantum physics. Without Rabindranath Tagore, we would not have quantum physics as it was expressed by Heisenberg, who won the Nobel Prize for quantum physics back in 1932. Heisenberg, in 1929, was a guest lecturer in India on physics. He came to India to give lectures on physics. There's a knocking. Somebody's knocking. Hey. Come in. Oh, you have come. Thank you.
Guruji, question.
Yeah,
Can I ask?
yeah,
Rabindranath Tagore was a philosopher and a poet.
yes.
And was he a mathematician also?
You'll see. I'm going to tell you now what happened, what he did.
Okay.
Interesting.
Now I'm going to show you the intersection between Vedanta and quantum physics. Okay? So in 1929, when Heisenberg went to India to give a series of lectures on physics, he spent some time with Rabindranath Tagore. And he expressed to him that he was doing all of these calculations, but he couldn't seem to make the calculations harmonize. So he explained to him what the idea. He said, I have this idea of quantum physics. So Rabindranath Tagore told him, this is Vedanta. So he explained to him Advaita Vedanta, which is different, of course, from the Vedanta which we study. There are different commentaries on Vedanta. Ramanujacharya did the Vishishta Dvaita commentary on Vedanta. Madhva did the Dvaita commentary. And Vishnu Swami did the Shuddha Dvaita commentary. And Nimbaditya did the Dvaita commentary. And then later, in our particular lineage, Baldev Vijabhushan did the Achinta Beta Beta Tattva commentary on Vedanta. So there are 5 major commentaries on Vedanta. But the commentary that he taught to Heisenberg was the Advaita Vedanta of Shankaracharya. And after he heard this, then he could understand, he began to see the recognition of relativity, interconnectedness, and impermanence as fundamental aspects of physical reality, which had been so difficult for himself and his fellow physicists to comprehend. And now he saw that it was the very basis of Indian spiritual traditions. After these conversations with Tagore, he said, some of the ideas that had seemed so crazy to me previously suddenly made more sense. That was a great help for me. Therefore, Heisenberg said, when he won the Nobel Prize, quantum theory will not look ridiculous to people who have read Vedanta. It was a very interesting quote. Now, not only Heisenberg, but also Schrödinger. He had a great affection. He won the Nobel Prize in 1933 with Dirac. And he stated, Schrödinger makes this following statement: the unity and continuity of Vedanta are reflected in the unity and continuity of wave mechanics. Schrödinger wrote this in his book Mein Weltanschauung, the German book that he wrote. Then after that, then Alfred North, Whitehead, also a renowned mathematician, as well as philosopher and metaphysician, had the following statement to make about Vedanta and the Vedic rishis of ancient India. The vastest knowledge of today cannot transcend the buddhi, intelligence of the rishis of ancient India. And science in its most advanced stage now is closer to Vedanta than ever before. Then there was one other physicist, Josephson. Josephson got the Nobel Prize for the Josephson effect, which he got later on. And he makes, here it is, Brian David Josephson, quantum physicist. The Vedanta and the Sankhya hold the key to the laws of mind and thought process, which are correlated to the quantum field, the operation and distribution of particles at atomic and molecular levels. So this is the main reason why I wrote this essay. Because in the Upanishads it says that if you take the tip of a hair and divide it into 10,000 parts, 1/10,000th the tip of a hair is the size of the Atman. The Atman. So to prove that point, I wanted to show that Vedanta and Vedic science goes down to atomic and molecular levels so that we can actually calculate 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. Vedic mathematicians and scientists have the ability to say that. It is not just some phantasmagoric concept or idea. I wrote this whole essay just to get to this point, to prove this conception. So this is a very important conception that we have got. So this is, and there's some other things which I wrote in here, but I'm not going to talk about them tonight. I just wanted to get to this particular point where we talked about the molecular structure of the quantum physics in relation to the size of the Atman. Now, understanding according to Vedic science the location of the Atman, that is given in Bhagavat Gita. Give me that Bhagavat Gita right there. In the 13th chapter, verse 34. Yata prakashyat yeka kritsnam lokam imam ravi shetram shetri tata kritsnam prakashyati bharata. O son of Bharat, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness. So, you have a gross physical body, which is composed of Panch Mahabhut, Prithvi, Jala, Agni, Vayu, and Akash. And what happens is, when I start to translate it in my head, I start translating it into Italian as well as Hindi. And so I'm getting to, I'm thinking, okay, which, so instead of saying Vayu, I'm thinking in my mind Larya. Okay, so we have these 5 elements, and that's the gross physical body. Within that physical body is another body called the Shukshma Sarira. That is the Manas, the Buddhi, and Ahankar. And there's a connection between the two that's made by the chakras. You have 7 chakras, Muladhara chakra, the Swadhisthana chakra, the Manipur chakra, the Anhat chakra, the Vishuddha chakra, the Agna chakra, and the Sahasra chakra. So these are the 7 chakras. Now, when the reason that the subtle body and the gross body stay connected is because of the chakras. Each chakra is rooted in an endocrine or exocrine gland within this physical body. And then they're connected to the subtle body. So in the area of the heart, the Anhat chakra, there's a connection between the subtle body and, or the Shukshma Sarira, or astral body, as they some call it in North, and the Stula Sarira, the gross physical body. So the soul is not in the physical heart. It's in the Anhat chakra in the Shukshma Sarira. And there's where the soul resides. And it broadcasts consciousness into the heart, which then is distributed throughout the physical body. The sun is in one place in the universe. And the sun broadcasts sunshine all over the universe. When the sunshine comes in contact with the Earth's atmosphere, it becomes contaminated by the pollution. But the sun isn't contaminated. Similarly, the consciousness, when it's broadcast from the soul, comes in contact with the gross physical body and the material nature, it becomes contaminated by the Triguna, Tamagun, Rajagun, Sattvagun. But the soul doesn't become contaminated. The soul remains pure. So, now, what happens is that the consciousness has these impressions due to the influence of Tamagun, Rajagun, and Sattvagun. There are sanskars, impressions, which create desires for physical pleasure or physical engagement. Okay? So those are, first of all, deposited in the subconscious, inactive subconscious mind. Then they're moved from the inactive subconscious mind to the active subconscious mind. And from the active subconscious mind, they come to the active conscious mind. And from the active conscious mind, with the help of prana, the prana pushes these consciousness and these conceptions into the physical body, and like in the pineal and pituitary glands. So when they enter into the pineal and pituitary glands, it excites the electrodes in those glands, which cause chemicals to manufacture in the brain. And the scientists look at those biochemicals and they say, oh, this is consciousness. No. The consciousness caused the manifestation of the chemicals. So now someone will say, how is that possible? How is it possible that consciousness can excite the electrodes? We have biology evidence that magnesium and calcium and other minerals are nourishing those electrodes to produce those biochemicals. But we have experiment which was done, in which they took a seed and they calculated the seed, how much calcium was in the seed. Okay? Then they took the seed and they placed it on ashless paper. Now, ashless paper has no mineral content. So that was the ground in which it was going to germinate. Then they used deionized water to water it, which has no mineral content. So the deionized water was used to feed and germinate the seed in the ashless paper. And then, after it germinated, they measured the calcium content again, and it had increased. So how did the calcium content increase? Because of the presence of Atma. So this is our evidence. Well, you're okay? You need water? So therefore we have evidence that the influence of the soul actually creates the mineral content, which then influences the electrodes to produce the biochemicals. This is the understanding. So this is why it was so important. Here's the water. Now you can drink. So this is how we understand the influence of Atma, soul. And this is the most important thing to understand. Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, he would emphasize life comes from life. This is the main contamination in society, is this evolutionary theory that life has come from nothing, from chemicals. It is not possible. No one has been able to prove this. So many times they have done different experiments, and Miller was the one who produced some amino acids.
Miller effect.
Huh?
It's also called as Miller's effect.
Yes. And then Deemer, he got a pond and he put some chemicals in the pond hoping that they could produce life. But they were never able to produce a single conscious entity. They can produce other chemicals like amino acids, but they can't produce a conscious entity. Consciousness does not come from a combination of chemicals. Consciousness comes from the soul. It is a direct manifestation of the soul. And the evidence of this experiment proves that point. So, therefore, we have to teach this in schools and in other places in the world. We have to educate society on the role of Atma and Paramatma. Okay? And then we can understand things from the perspective of karma. Because without understanding Atma and Paramatma, one cannot understand karma. And without understanding karma, you have no understanding of why things are happening in the world. Why do bad things happen to good people? Were they always good? Were they good last life too? These are things that people don't have an answer to because they don't understand the skein of many, many births in the process of reincarnation. And it's also the reason why they don't understand the patience and tolerance that many Indian people have with the struggles that they have in the world, because they know it's not just one life. I'm going through a series of lives, and I'm coming to a particular destination at some point. That destination for the average Hindu is moksha, or liberation. But in Gaudiya Vedanta philosophy and theology, we teach that there's something more than just moksha, more than just liberation, more than just entering into Brahman. There is Vaikuntha, and beyond Vaikuntha, there is Goloka. And there are eternal spiritual pastimes between Radha and Krishna. And this is the real goal of our spiritual life. So, today I've given you some overview of the history of Indian mathematics and cosmology and its origins and how it came to the West, and why I did this was to emphasize the point about the manifestation of the soul. Since we can understand that the molecular concepts of quantum physics are not different from the concepts given in Vedanta, then we can understand that the soul can be 1/10,000th the tip of the hair, which is a molecular structure. So this is our presentation for tonight. I want to thank you very much for coming, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
This lecture was very knowledgeable and very enlightening to let us know how the Vedic culture and the Western culture.
What do you think, teachers? Was it interesting for you? You liked it, I could tell. You kept smiling. Okay, I want to thank everybody very much. Vanchakal Patri Vishya Sindhu